Hey guys, Lonewolf here. Now I haven't had a whole lot of time over the past few days to play Battlefield Hardline or even have time to talk to the people I'd usually play with, but when I do get an opportunity to, one of the things that comes up a lot, both in-game and private discussions, is that the damage in Battlefield Hardline is either loved or hated. Just generally quite a lot of contention about it. There's also some discussion about weapons being overpowered, so I just want to give my thoughts on that today. I haven't really come to a conclusion how I feel about higher time to kill versus slower time to kill. I think it's a bit early to tell with Hardline because the game hasn't been out all that long, and at this point I think it would be unfair to judge it. We need to wait and let people's strategy and tactics develop a little bit more, mature a little bit more, so we know exactly how it really is going to play in the long run, rather than just right now where people are still getting used to a fairly drastic change. Now there is no denying that the time to kill in Hardline is substantially shorter than it ever was in Battlefield 4, even before the September patch that lowered the damage down. Now personally I felt that after that patch, Battlefield 4's time to kill, as it is now, is a little bit too slow. I find it kind of immersion breaking that you need 5 shots to kill in close quarters with a 5.56 rifle in what is supposed to be a modern military shooter. 5 bullets just seems excessive, but at the same time I do understand what people are saying about Hardline feeling too fast. It's definitely a big change, and there are arguments on both sides. Now whether or not you approve of this is for the individual to decide for themselves, but I hear a lot of people talking about how this affects the skill curve of the game, or perhaps the skill component of this or that. And I'm really not going to go into that because I feel like most of the time this is pure conjecture. I'm just going to give my observations on how the higher damage in Hardline has affected gameplay versus Battlefield 4. At least this way, even if it's not a hard fact, I can at least say it honestly with some conviction. The first thing I noticed is that my reaction time is much more relevant in Battlefield Hardline versus Battlefield 4. If I'm really alert, there's a good chance I'm going to be able to kill 2 or even 3 people before they're able to shoot me once. As a result, I don't feel like I need to carry the med bag as often. I can run around as the enforcer with one of the battle rifles, and I don't feel like I'm at any kind of major disadvantage against somebody who's using the AKM, which does similar damage, with the operator class. I just don't need the med bag as much. However, I do understand that this is frustrating for some people who see this as moving in more the direction of arena shooters like Call of Duty. There's definitely a bit of that about it. There's definitely a feeling of that, and if you really don't like that, then I can understand why this game is perhaps rubbing you the wrong way. So I'm not unsympathetic to that particular way of thinking. The game does also punish you more for bad positioning. If you stand out in the open, or if you try and cross an open area that may be watched by an enemy, there's a much greater chance you're going to get killed in Battlefield Hardline versus Battlefield 4. It's much easier for somebody with lower gun skill to kill you at even medium distance. Even though the guns, generally speaking, have higher recoil, it is a lot easier to kill people because of that higher damage, and because actually it's not too difficult to control these weapons. While I'm on the topic of recoil, yes, it has been increased compared with Battlefield 4, but at the same time the average engagement distance has been shortened, so I don't actually think it's any more difficult to hit the average target compared with Battlefield 4. So I don't think you can say that the effective time to kill is consistent with Battlefield 4 just because the recoil is higher and people are going to miss more often. I don't actually think this is the case. I do think it's reasonable to say that the time to kill is, across the board, much quicker. One key effect having a faster time to kill, and you can see this as either a positive or a negative, is that it puts more power with the individual and makes you less reliant on teamwork to kill multiple opponents. In Battlefield 4, if you came across a group of enemies, say 5 to 8, if you flanked them, you probably don't want to engage that with your primary weapon, because 1 or 2 of them are going to be able to turn around and shoot you before you've managed to kill them all. You simply don't have enough ammunition to get that done, and realistically speaking, you're not going to be accurate enough to land every bullet. In Hardline, however, if you're pretty accurate and you work well with your sidearm as well, then you're probably going to be able to kill at least 5 people with your 2 magazines, your primary and your secondary. Now for me, I enjoy this because I'm often flanking on my own, particularly if I'm not playing with my squad, then chances are I'm not going to get a lot of team support, and I want to be able to be that one-man army. But for people who really like the emphasis on teamwork, this has toned that down a little bit. So again, I understand the arguments against this. I don't necessarily agree, because I find that in Battlefield there's often a lot of people who are very selfishly minded and aren't prepared to work with you. So it's kind of important that the individual is able to do quite a bit of work on their own should they need to. I mentioned this with the beta as well, but because of the reduced number of shots to kill, strafing while you're shooting at somebody at close to medium range is a lot more viable than it was in Battlefield 4. Chances are you're still going to drop them before they have a chance to react, because you simply don't need to land as many shots. I'd still recommend stopping to shoot, particularly at medium to long range. It will improve your time to kill because you're going to land much more shots on target if you compensate for recoil, but it's not as necessary as it is in Battlefield 4. And I guess you could see this as a downside. I mean, potentially this does make the game a little bit easier. It makes it a little bit easier to kill people. Now, on the issue of one-frame deaths or being insta-kill, this is obviously something that provokes a fair amount of frustration in amongst the community, and it's something I'm sort of ambivalent about. On the shooter's end, I really appreciate it, because in Battlefield 4, shooting someone with a carbine 6 times at kind of medium-long range and then having them escape you just felt absurd. I would oftentimes just leave the game when that happened. It was so incredibly immersion breaking, I just didn't have any interest in playing anymore. It's that ridiculous to me. In Hardline, this doesn't really happen anymore. Providing your aim isn't really terrible, if you shoot somebody first, chances are they're going down. And given that you're hitting them with a firearm, at least in your little virtual world, this seems reasonable enough. However, on the receiving end, I completely understand why people find this frustrating. You feel like you aren't given an opportunity to react, you don't feel like you have any control, you feel helpless. It's the reason why snipers and shotguns generally are so hated, is it feels like they just didn't give you an opportunity to, play fair. So I do understand this. I would say that in Battlefield 4, if you're shot in the back, generally speaking, except at those sort of medium-long ranges, chances are you're going down anyway, so does it really matter whether that damage is absorbed over a short period of time or instantly? Well, not so much. But I do see why people find this annoying, particularly if you spawn into a couple of deaths like this. That can really wind you up. So again, it's one of those things you can come down either way on. Personally, I'm not too wound up by one-frame deaths. I rationalize them and I can kind of handle that in my head. It's not something that winds me up. There are plenty of other things I find very frustrating. That's not really one of them. Now, there is an argument, and it's something I heard a lot in Battlefield 4 around the September patch launch, which lowered the damage down in that game, that having a slower time to kill makes the game more skill-based. Players need to be more accurate, they need to land more shots on target, and my counter-argument to that was always that, first of all, it makes you more dependent on what are generally quite unreliable teammates to kill multiple opponents, and it also makes you more reliant on having a med bag because you need to have a good health status going into a firefight. In Battlefield 4, if you shot at someone when you had low health, there's a much greater chance they'll be able to turn and get a shot onto you than in Battlefield Hardline, where chances are you would be able to kill them before they're able to react if you've positioned yourself well. On top of this, it seems to be that having a faster time to kill just takes some emphasis off good accuracy and places it with your reaction time, good situational awareness and good positioning. I'm not sure how those are somehow lesser virtues than accuracy. So whilst I do understand this argument, and I think it might even be possible to make a case that accuracy is less important in Battlefield Hardline versus Battlefield 4, at the same time I don't think people can talk about how changing the time to kill has made the game more or less skill based, because there are so many factors that go into that, and just because accuracy might not be as important as it was in Battlefield 4 doesn't mean other things haven't been elevated, and good players will still rise to the top. They've just got to have slightly different skills. Now, when it comes to weapons being overpowered, this is a phrase that I hear thrown around so often in so many games, and honestly I'm a little bit sick of it, because so much of the time it's misused and it's just thrown around in frustration. In reality, what we have in Battlefield Hardline is a load of weapons that are stronger than others. There's like a sort of divide down the middle. We have some weapons at the top of the pack which actually are pretty balanced against each other. If you look at the AKM, the M416, the M16A3, the battle rifles even, the Vector K10, these weapons actually are pretty balanced against one another. They're not the same, they have very individual characteristics, but they're actually all pretty competitive with one another. The problem is that we've also got a whole load of weapons in the game that nobody's really going to use because you can't be competitive with them. Weapons like the L85, which is just in no way better than something like the M416 or the M45 SMG. Again, I can't really see anyone wanting to use this. So what I expect the Visceral's probably going to do, given that they seem to have made a conscious decision to make the time to kill faster, is rather than nerfing these quote-unquote overpowered weapons, they're probably going to buff the weaker ones. So that's what I would expect we will see in the near future. I think people ought to just calm down about this. I can't believe that Visceral isn't aware the weapon balance is a little bit off, in fact quite a bit off, and I would expect some changes in the near future, so don't worry too much about this. Now I just want to add this little drop in here at the end. The lack of uniform soldier aiming in Battlefield Hardline is inexcusable. They added this into Battlefield 4, they said they were going to port this stuff into Battlefield Hardline, they encouraged people to use it in Battlefield 4. The lack of it is really screwing up my muscle memory. I really cannot emphasize enough my extreme displeasure at this omission. You should be able to see in some of this gameplay footage where my aim is just completely off because I'm either overcompensating for the fact that my sensitivity changes when I aim down sights, or I'm not compensating enough and I miss the target either way. So this really needs to be fixed as a matter of priority for Visceral. Anyway, that's pretty much all I want to say on this. I hope to have more time to play the game in the coming weeks, so hopefully I'll get some more videos up soon. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please leave a like and subscribe if you did, and I'll see you next time.